Derby County are searching for the future centre-half to partner Erin Cashin in the long-term rebuild of Derby County, and a lot of people may have thought that was going to be the likes of Jake Rooney or Ben Radcliffe, but one of those players looked to be on the way out this January. Ben Radcliffe has been on loan at Gateshead for this entire season so far, and he looks to be making a move to EFL League One just this January window. Now, Ben Radcliffe hasn't necessarily set the world alight for Derby County. He made a few first-team appearances in the EFL Trophy last season and also played a few games for the under-21s where obviously he was one of the shining lights. Now, heading into this season, he went on loan and followed Dejon Brown to Gateshead in a move which really started to build a real good relationship between Derby County and Gateshead. And it's a very interesting one for me because Ben Radcliffe has performed really well for them, and he's done a really good job at centre-half for them, and he's put in some blinding performances, scored some goals from set pieces as well, which is obviously something which Paul Warne and his staff are looking for, but there's obviously something that they aren't entirely sure about. And I thought the intention of this loan spell was to get him a year's worth of men's football, similar to Dejon Brown, and then get him in and around the first team for next season. But it looks as if that is going to be cut short, and he's going to find himself heading to League One. The team who are rumoured to be picking him up in January is Crawley Town, and it's a deal which, for me, makes a lot of sense for Derby County in two ways. Moving Ben Radcliffe on, I believe he's 19, 20 years old. Moving Ben Radcliffe on opens the door for another player to come in and fulfil that role. It opens the door for other opportunities. Now, this could be a smart decision by Derby. It could also go on to be a terrible decision by Derby in the sense of if he goes to Crawley Town, performs excellently there, and then moves on for a really big fee, it obviously then opens the door for Derby County to go, hang on, we made a bit of a mistake here. Now, for me, as a Derby County fan, I think we've seen over the course of maybe the last 10 to 12 years that Derby County, when it comes to youngsters, never get bang for their buck, never get the right amount of money, never put the right sell-on clauses in. We're always undervaluing because we've had to get rid for financial purposes, but we're not really in that position anymore. And this report, by the way, comes from Football Insider. It comes from Pete O'Rourke over on Twitter. It was released just a couple of days before Christmas, and I wasn't really sure what to believe of it, but I'm starting to believe that maybe it is the right deal for Ben Radcliffe. He's once first team senior men's football in the professional game, and he looks as if he's going to get that at Crawley Town. Now, Crawley haven't necessarily had the greatest start to life in League One, but there's no reason why they can't turn it around. And they do have, in my opinion, players capable of being able to be a part of a turnaround, and adding a player of the quality of Ben Radcliffe from Derby County's academy, in my opinion, would be a good one. Now, for me, I'm not entirely sure about letting him go permanently. Depending on the fee, which isn't being reported yet, I am not sure, because I think that Ben Radcliffe, if at the end of the season has finished this season really well, how he's played pretty much the majority of this season, then I think we could have got probably more than what we're getting now. Now, the big question really for me is sell-on fees, and do we have a potential buyback? Because for me, if he's going to perform to a really high level, then I think we need a buyback clause in that contract of him moving on. I think we also need a sell-on fee in case we choose not to buy him back, and then we still make something out of the deal, a little bit more than what we did before. And I do think Ben Radcliffe could go on to have an excellent career. Made his debut for Burton, he's played for our first team in cup competitions, and obviously he's done really well at Gateshead. And it's one of them for me where we're looking at these youngsters coming through, and what we used to do was look at them and go, oh, that we need to get them in the first team as quickly as possible. We need to make sure that they're playing top level football for us. But we just haven't had that yet. We haven't had that second batch of players after your Birds, Sibleys, Knights, Thompsons, Cashins, and that's what we're looking to do now, and Ben Radcliffe is going to be a part of that. And whether he makes the first team or moves on, it opens up the door for the next player to come in, the likes of Adisa Asayande and Rio Canaville and players like that, who ultimately they might not make the step up, but it opens up that door for them to make the step up. And with Ben moving on, I think it's a difficult one to really judge, because I think it's one which ultimately it closes the door on a youngster who could have made the step up, that we're never really going to know if they could make the step up with us. we also look at the situation with Jake Rooney and Darren Robinson, two other youngsters who I believe are probably going to go out on loan again in January, maybe even permanent transfers. Not because they're not good enough to play for us, but because there's not really an opportunity for them to play. And that's what we're really trying to work with right now. And we need to find those youngsters who are going to come in and step straight into the first team. And we just don't quite have that batch of talent coming through yet. And it will come, it will make it, but we've got to make sure it's the right players. And for me, I think Ben Radcliffe's contract expires at the end of this season. Let me just go and check. Ben Radcliffe, where's his transfer market? I think his contract expires June 2025. So yeah, this upcoming year, which is obviously sort of, that's where I can see the point of taking this fee, because if we take the fee now, in 6 months' time, he might not renew his contract, knowing that he's not really going to be a part of the first team. And that then closes the door on us getting anything for him. Now, he is a versatile player. He can play in midfield. He can play at centre-back. He can play at right-back. Now, this season, he's made 17 appearances in the National League, scored twice. 83% of the time he's been in the starting 11, 85% of his minutes. Which is, in my opinion, brilliant. He's done a really good job at just 21 years old in the National League. We saw it with Dejan Brown last year, and we're going to see, hopefully, his career progress as he goes down to Crawley Town in League One. And I will keep tabs on him. I'll keep tabs on a lot of players who leave Derby County, the likes of Louis Sibley, Malcolm Ebiowi, Festi Ebiselli, players like that. And I just do think that it's a good chance for Derby County to prove that we're not just going to hold these youngsters and keep them at the club until they end up leaving on a free transfer at 22, 23, like we did with Max Bird and Jason Knight, essentially. Now, I know we got fees for them, but realistically, they left because their contracts were expiring. We couldn't get them to sign new deals. So, same with Louis Sibley. Didn't offer him a good enough deal to keep him, and he then moved on. And these are all players who we've had big money offers for. Jason Knight, a few years ago, was of interest of Burnley, Brighton. I think there was an £8 million rumoured bid that was put in at one point for Jason Knight. Max Bird, at one point, I believe there was £5 million bid put in for a £5 million bid put in for Max Bird at some point. I know that Louis Sibley was of interest of Leeds United, in which he turned down. And did Derby County accept the fee? We don't really know, but Louis Sibley never ended up going. I think it was about £7.5 million, maybe a little bit more than that. And it's the same with all of our youngsters. We never get the bang for our buck. You can even go back to Will Hughes, a player who was of interest of Barcelona and Liverpool at 16, 17 years old, and we had players being offered to us by both clubs that would have probably improved our first team at the time, but we kept hold of Will Hughes and then eventually only sold him for £5 million, which was a really disappointing deal in the end. Now, for me, I think getting rid of Ben Radcliffe isn't necessarily a bad deal, but let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Hit that subscribe button as well while you're down there. Turn on the notification bell, and I'll catch you in my next video later on today, which will be a Leeds United preview.